What is going on, people? We are back. It is the official Talkin' Lost duo. Luke Reviews is back after I absolutely abominably screwed up last week with the communication. Luke was unfortunately unable to come on for Shape of Things to Come and the Project Hail Mary episode, but we're back this week. We're wrapping March. We're about to wrap season 4. We've only got 2 episodes left after this one. Something nice back home. And Luke, I feel like I just want to have the Shape of Things to Come discussion with you, because considering that this is the episode that followed up, what is it? Why is it that this show feels the need that every time we get a banger episode, it has to be followed up with a mediocre one? Like, this is like the 3rd time in a row that this has happened.
Well, it goes back to Newton's law of physics, or it's the 3rd law of motion. Every action has an equal but opposite reaction. So you have a really good one, you kind of have to have a not as great one. But even so, this is on island. It's quite a fillery episode, but off island, it's like,
even, it's funny because everybody was saying that to me, and even off island, the off island stuff, I was like, I don't know if it's just because I'm just sick of Jack by this point, or if just like I kind of already knew that he was going to lose his mind. And I guess that there was really nothing in this episode that I was getting that I either already didn't know, or like I don't know. And maybe this just might be a byproduct of me having seen the show already. So I kind of knowing that a lot of the stuff that's in this episode doesn't necessarily get paid off, or at least it does in ways that we already know. This is just kind of a nothing burger episode for me. I was getting a lot of vibes of Stranger in a Strange Land from this one. It was mostly like the whole episode, both between on island and off island, is, oh, Jack's literally caving under the pressure. But I guess just by this point, I feel like my biggest problem with this episode is that, so just to preface, this episode is Something Nice Back Home. This is the Jack needing to get the emergency appendectomy on the beach episode. And that's pretty much the entirety of the beach. And then also in the jungle, you have another like kind of Sawyer and Miles trekking through the jungle with Claire. And we get
Sawyer moments.
We get some great moments. We get a really cool payoff at the end of that storyline. But this was giving me very, very heavy Stranger in a Strange Land vibes. Where like, yeah, this is the definition of a filler episode. We had to give Jack some focus since, now that we know, obviously, the confirmation of the Oceanic Six, we needed to be like, oh, okay, but now we need to show why Jack started losing his mind, since in earlier flash forwards, it seemed like he was fine ultimately when they got off the island. We're getting closer to the end of the season. We're getting closer to kind of the merging of the two timelines. This is probably the most Nolan-esque season that we've gotten so far of the show, in the sense that we've got the 2 dueling timelines, the one that is taking place past the events that we're seeing on the island. But obviously, we can presume that once we get to the finale, we will see the merge of like, okay, now that we know who got off the island and who did not, now the only thing left that we need to see is how those 2 timelines are going to converge, right? And I guess just in the sense of, we already knew that Jack had started to lose his mind. We already knew that Jack was a member of the Oceanic Six. He was the first one that got a flash forward in the finale of season 3. And now that we know the identities of the rest of the Oceanic Six in this, throughout, that have been progressively revealed throughout the first half of this season, I just feel like this one, even amongst filler episodes, it really feels like, and even the little bits that we get of characters, in this episode, the Jin discovering that Charlotte can speak Korean and basically trying to force her to help him get Sun off the island. The whole
very good Jin moment, because he doesn't really do much, but when he does, it's like, oof.
Yeah, the beyond insufferable, now the subtext is text. Oh, the love triangle. Oh, Juliet openly acknowledging that, like, oh, Jack is meant to be with Kate. That's where just like this season is really, really, but that has probably been the weakest point. It's like, it's really tough because, again, the shortened episode count provides us for some of the highest highs that we've ever had in the whole show. The constant last week with the Shape of Things to Come and the amazing action sequence, the new characters that we've gotten from the freighter, but then it just feels like when it comes to certain of the storylines that has been being set up throughout, like anything having to do with the love triangle, or love square, I should say, between Jack, Sawyer, Kate, and Juliet, I'm just like, no, get it away from me. And certain flash forwards with the Oceanic Six, now that we know who they are, again, it just feels like it's tedious, and it feels like we're repeating, old ground. I don't know. That might just be me, though.
I don't know. I guess as a first-time viewer, I enjoy seeing this continued progress to the full darkness that Jack goes through, because we see the tipping point here. Of course, he gets engaged to Kate, which is like probably the fandom going like, oh my god, finally, when they're giving it to us in a flash forward of all things, and then everything starts going downhill. Hurley's just completely lost it, apparently.
Yeah.
And now Jack's gonna start losing it. So, and there's the whole Aaron situation where Jack clearly found out that he's technically his nephew,
Right.
at some point.
Right.
We haven't seen that yet.
Right.
We'll see
That definitely obviously has an element to play. You know, again, there's a reason why you're seeing in the same episode that in the flash forwards, Jack is being haunted once again by Christian, once again haunted by off-island specters, who up until this point it was really only Hurley that was being haunted that way. You know, obviously, again, we know that Saeed's been working for Ben. Son basically retired and went home to Korea. You know, Kate is now basically shacked up with Jack and they're raising Aaron, but obviously, again, there's still a lot, obviously, of stuff that's been unresolved and a lot of stuff that we still have to find out, obviously. But you're right. So the Christian Shepherd of it all is probably the most interesting point because, again, for a figure that has been largely absent from this season overall, as we've been focusing on this on-island versus off-island drama, you know, especially with last week's episode, how the Ben versus Widmore conflict was officially solidified in a way that it now.
Which, by the way, I don't think I've ever watched a season of television where the closer we get to the finale, the less I know what's going to happen. It's like
there's just they just keep
now
adding.
they both don't know where the island is, so they're just both looking for it. Like
it's like what is happening? It's like how does this work in terms of like, well, but again, if anything, I feel like that's the most self-explanatory because given that Widmore had presumably been searching for the island the entire time since the plane had crashed, obviously, but they didn't find the location until the energy, you know, dispersion went off with the destruction of the Swan Station at the end of season 2, because that's obviously going all the way back to that. That's when this whole thing started. So, but all of the hints being laid there as far as the island, it's getting to the point now where, and again, it's funny how we keep complimenting the show on its character over story struggle, but it's getting to the point now where the mystery of whatever the hell is going on with the island has kind of trumped any of the individual character drama. And now it's to the point where even though, again, the characters who we know is, you know, the Oceanic Six, the ones who escaped the island, are clearly still being haunted and are being pulled back towards it. And obviously, again, as we knew, this is one of the things we knew going into the season when Jack infamously yelled at the end of season 3, we have to go back. And it showed that, oh, they may have escaped, but the island is not done with them.
Yeah, I guess with the character stuff, they're more divided into their little groups, so that maybe leaves some dynamics off the table. Like you have whole Locke's gang that kind of got literally blown up.
Yeah, literally
in the last episode. Now they're kind of, some of them are going to the cabin, some of them are going to the beach. There's a few people on the boat, and I guess the show is better when Jack and Locke are in the same vicinity.
That's exactly
like season 2 is basically carried by that. So I guess they just missed each other. And
right, and then
Sawyer
season 3, you had the others enough in order to like basically act as like an interesting foil between them, you know, and their kind of individual interesting struggles. And I guess just the fact that, like you said, they have both, it's an interesting query where, because they have both been relatively apart for the entirety of the season, really since the first episode, and the fact that for the most part, they've both been wrong, because obviously Locke was right about everybody on the freighter wanting to do them harm and not being there to rescue them, which obviously proves Jack wrong, because Jack was so hell-bent on getting them off the island that he was ignoring the obvious signs, to the point now where they're literally directly confronting Daniel and Charlotte and being like, what the hell is going on? You guys lied to us. You said you were here to rescue us. You weren't. Meanwhile, Jack's over here dying of fucking an exploding appendix. It's like, wow, talk about bad timing. But at the same time, Locke also wasn't necessarily right, because as Ben had been consistently calling out Locke since the beginning of the season, he really had no idea what he was doing. He was kind of flying by the seat of his pants, and unfortunately taking shelter in the other's barracks did not work out at all, considering that they didn't know that there was a mercenary death squad on the freaking boat that was there to literally blow it up. Now Locke, Ben, and Hurley are off God only knows where, looking for Jacob's cabin, looking for answers, while Sawyer, the only honestly kind of efficient guy left, is basically making sure that Claire and Aaron, they're basically kind of stuck with Miles at this point, because Miles is just kind of like there being like, yeah, I didn't sign up for this. I did not sign up for like innocent bodies to get killed like that. And then you have a really twisted moment where they stumble upon the impromptu graves of Alex and Carl from 2 weeks ago. And of course, you see Miles' necromancy at work there. But all of this is dovetailing into the fact that it's weird, because this is a filler episode. It is very much, very, very much stalling time, but we are clearly also moving towards the end game. You have that great moment where Sawyer's group ends up running into Lapidus, who tells them to hide 5 minutes before Kimi and his team get there. And, they're still recovering from the attack and the effects of the smoke monster. And
Ben has apparently a dog whistle for, which is like,
yes,
okay, great. What the hell is the smoke monster?
Yeah, well, again,
like 9 more questions.
Bringing it back to the Ben of it all. I know I talked about this a little bit with Pat last week, but we know again, obviously, that Ben has been lying. Obviously, again, Ben has been using his powers of duplicity to make it seem like he has been communicating with Jacob this whole time, when in reality, Locke kind of figured it out last season, and I think we, as people, can figure it out. It's officially confirmed later on, but at this point, it's basically revealed Ben has never communicated once with Jacob. Ben has never been able to communicate with Jacob. But again, knowing the kind of the malevolent force that the Man in Black has been posing, up until this point, or sorry, that the smoke monster, I should say, up until this point has been posing. We can clearly see that Ben, as last week's episode confirmed, has some sort of a connection to it. And just showing that, okay, just because Ben can't communicate with the true master of the island doesn't mean that he's, again, Ben has lived there for basically his entire adult life. And considering how much time he spent with the others as opposed to Dharma, it's like Ben has picked up a few tricks along the way. So you have all that. And then you ultimately have it where once Jack gets off the island, right, he seems to have gotten everything he wanted. He's living this ideal lifestyle with Kate. They're raising Aaron. Everything's great, except Hurley is not taking his meds. Hurley is giving him messages from the island. Jack doesn't want to believe them, but he knows too much about the island and its comings and goings and how it operates to know that Hurley is completely talking out of his ass, especially since we already had the confirmation that Hurley has been seeing visions of Charlie. They've been giving them messages beyond the grave. You also have Kate acting weird and suspicious for some reason. And then at the end of the episode, you find out that she's been, doing some basically off-island stuff for Sawyer, who we know obviously did not make it off the island. And you have an argument between them.
My guess is like it's his other kid with the woman that he conned. That would be right. My guess.
And the fact that that's as predictable as that is, and the fact that they're queuing that up to be like, oh, is Kate cheating on Jack? And it's like, no, I was doing this for Sawyer. And then, of course, that sets Jack off, and Jack's already been started drinking and taking pills as a result of seeing Christian. And it's just, that's the whole thing where I'm just like, yeah, just get that away from me. Like, I am so beyond sick of the whole Jack and Sawyer. The fact that Sawyer, literally, they are basically acting now that Sawyer died, essentially, since we basically have confirmation now that the Oceanic Six are pretending that the people that they left on the island, Jin, obviously among them, are dead. So, whether or not they're actually dead or not by this point, we'll come to find out. But at the very least, they're acting like they are dead for the purposes of the real world. So just that whole thing in general, I just could do without. But then obviously you have Jack seeing Christian in the doctor's office, and it's only the brief moment, and that obviously dovetails with the end bit, obviously, in Sawyer's camp back on the island, where Claire wakes up, sees sees Christian, or whoever has been posing as Christian this entire time, cooing the baby. Next thing you know, the episode ends, Sawyer and Miles wake up. Miles is like, oh, well, you put a what's it called, a restraining order around me. So, I saw her walk up and wander into the jungle, but yeah, that was a good bit. Next thing you know, they find Aaron abandoned in the jungle. Claire's gone off to God only knows where. So you still have like the seeds. It's very interesting how they're bringing back like the seeds that initially connected the characters in the first couple of seasons, showing that, oh, this was not just a random group of strangers that got on the plane. That was one of the things that the early seasons of Lost did really well, was creating all this interesting connective tissue between the characters. Now we're seeing that play out in even more interesting ways, considering that on island, again, Jack still has no knowledge of Claire being his secret sister, but off island, that's clearly something that Jack has discovered, and that's why, him and Kate are raising Aaron. So some interesting seeds being dropped here, but overall, there's too much stupid stuff that I've kind of gotten really sick of by this point in the show that's happening to really make this like a worthwhile episode, I would say.
Yeah, I guess it's the filler calm before the big storm.
Right.
You said we have one more, and then
we have one more, and then it's another big 3-part finale. And like there's no place like home. This season's finale has made a lot of people's top 10 lists. So this is definitely going to be one to look out for. And again, we already had like Through the Looking Glass, which was already like a baller finale and one of the best 2-parters that we've gotten so far.
Right now, I have no idea how there's 2 more full-length seasons after this. Or is it full-length?
No, right? Decently full-length. So not as long as the first 3, but they're about 17 episodes each. This is the shortest season because of the writer's strike. But like I said, they adopted this release structure going forward, where they aired all the episodes in one successive block in the spring, as opposed to airing part of it in the fall and part of it in the spring, which again was already a release strategy that HBO had been doing for a while. But the fact that this became like the more conventional release strategy going forward for the show is what's very interesting. So I feel like that's really all that I have to say about this episode. Like I said, there's not much that happens in it. And really,
I had a lot more to say about the last episode.
Well, I'm about to say, by all means, if you want to, say it now, because again, we missed it last week. So
I had the privilege of actually being a Talking Lost viewer for once. But then you guys, I think you guys went into like some spoilers, so I just tuned out. But anyway, it was a very defining Ben episode. I'd say it was one of the most, the moment where he lets Alex die is like one of the most character defining moments in like any media I've seen. I'm like, oh, he's that committed to the island. Okay.
I feel like even more so than his solo flashback episode from last season, this was the episode that more than anything showed us really who Ben was as character. Because rather than getting like a sad sack, oh, he was bullied and never really had a chance and so became a villain origin story, which again it's a good episode, but it's a villain origin story we've seen so many times. What was really interesting about this episode is showing how really, more than anything else, Ben has an agenda of his own and showing that how nothing that has happened this season has been random or by chance. Everything has happened as, as it has kind of been ordained as a result of things that Ben has done in the past. You know, the conflict with Widmore, everything's been overhanging this season. Now, Ben is not nearly the innocent victim that he may have wanted us to believe going into this season. Not that we would have thought that, but still considering everything. And then obviously once showing that even off island, he is still an absolute mastermind considering how easily he was able to bring Saeed under his sway, and showing how he is already starting to make the steps in order to, reunite the people who got off the island, figure out who did get off the island, and also showing that like this conflict between him and Widmore has been going on a lot longer than we initially thought.
Yeah, I'm guessing Widmore is going to be more directly involved in going forward than just man behind the curtain.
As I say with all episodes of the show going forward, yes and maybe. Yes and maybe.
That's the lost mantra, isn't it? Just yes, and maybe not.
Maybe. We'll see. But yeah, only 2 episodes left of season 4. It's actually kind of insane considering how much stuff has happened since we premiered this season back at the end of January. Again, the shortest season overall of Lost, but I would say easily the most action-packed and the most important as far as continuing the show going forward. After, like I said, the little bit of the slog that was season 3, and we finally got through a baller finale that set us up for, so far, like I said, with this episode and Eggtown aside, what has otherwise been a very, very good season overall. Really jam-packed, really action-packed. Things are really being set up to carry us into the last 2 seasons. And again, oh man, it just makes me so happy that you're like, I don't understand how they can keep going after the season, because you're right. There was a universe where this could have been the last season. But Lindelof was like, oh no, I've got you guys now. Now you are in my world now. And now, you thought that I was just hinting at time travel. You thought that you were going to get a conventional time star. Oh, just you wait. Oh, I'm going to rewrite the rules as you guys know them. So make sure you guys stay tuned for all of that. But before we get out of here, Luke, we have some TV shows that we got to recap. We've been having such a great run of movies this year that I'd be hard-pressed to say that, again, we got almost all of our favorite TV shows back. We got Invincible back. We got Monarch back. That's been going on for a couple of weeks. We got Daredevil, the premiere of the new season of Daredevil, which thankfully has no longer been a season Frankenstein together. We've got a more conventional season going forward. And we have the long-awaited premiere of one of yours and mine favorite shows of the COVID era, For All Mankind. 3 years since the last season, but we're finally back. And they just announced that the next upcoming season, season 6, will be the final season as well. Apple's longest running TV show as of right now. And we're getting the Russia-centered spin-off show later this year, Star City. So which of those do you want to start with first?
I also want to mention that The Pit has been awesome all the way through.
Pit has been great this season. Some character choices this season that I have not been a fan of. I don't like that they turned Robbie into an asshole. I don't like the new AI-centered chick that they brought on. But overall, in terms of this season, really started to show how the effects of that place are really starting to get to its characters. I think is once again showing that, like, yes, this is the TV that we love.
Yeah, and I think The Pit, watching The Pit and Lost with all these other shows is like, okay, there's a certain levels to what is really good TV and what is like pretty good TV. So I don't know, whatever you want to start with.
All right, let's just run through Invincible first, because that one was the quickest one. So the thing that I've been saying about Invincible since the show premiered back in 2021. Obviously, when the show premiered back in 2021, it was kind of, again, continuing in the vein of The Boys, how Amazon was kind of giving us these alternate superhero shows that weren't afraid to get a little bit more violent, a little bit more satirical, a little bit more, definitely a lot more bloody. But I think I've always said that the biggest difference between this and The Boys is that The Boys started out as a satire, and then eventually, like, all satire just became to reflect the reality ultimately that we were living in, versus Invincible. Invincible still wants to, like, keep the idea of, like, the fantastical superhero storytelling going, but with a lot more of a realistic lens. Again, this is Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, who is doing this comic, and again, he is the showrunner in addition to the creator of the original comic. And from what I've heard, aside from this most recent episode that just aired, they stuck pretty closely to the comic. But this is the point now where in the show where I feel like we've gotten past all of the setup now. And now we're into like, okay, like, Invincible as a character is grappling with like how much worse things are getting, you know, how he's been a superhero for a long time now. These Viltrumites have been just creating absolute havoc. The fact that it feels like every other week there's a new, there's a new threat coming up, and how it feels like, you know, no matter how many people he puts down, there's always, you know, we're getting to the point now where he's starting to question what the point of it all is. And you're starting to see that really start to affect the other characters as well. Especially you saw after how the last season ended with back-to-back first an invasion from Angstrom Levi with a series of Mark alternates and almost took over the world and resulted in the death of Rexplode, followed up by the arrival of Viltrumite Conquest, voiced amazingly by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, in a battle that almost killed Mark and Eve and Mark's new brother, Oliver. And so this season, you're kind of seeing more of those effects start to weigh on Mark, while at the same time, you got out in space, Alan and Nolan have teamed up and are starting to recruit other people in order to eventually get ready for the upcoming Viltrumite War. You've also got the introduction of the ultimate Viltrumite big bad, the reigning Viltrumite Emperor Thrag, voiced by Lee Pace, in what will assumably be yet another iconically voiced, overly dramatic villain role after he played Ronan in the first Guardians of the Galaxy and playing Thranduil in the Hobbit movies. So So what are your thoughts on this season of Invincible so far?
Yeah, every time Invincible rolls around, I'm like, oh, it's Invincible. He's fighting all these fun villain characters for the season, and then the big villain starts making his presence, and then he fights a villain at the end of the season, and it's awesome. And then the next season comes a year later, and we kind of do that again.
It's always consistently.
I think you're right that I'm now like, okay, what's the end game? Like, I don't really know any of the comic storyline. I've seen like a few panels here and there of like where things go, but I'm like, okay, how does it get there? Like, how does the Nolan plot tie back into the Mark plot? That's kind of what I'm waiting for.
I went and did a little bit of reading ahead on the kind of what's to come now, because you're right. Like I said, this is the point where things are really finally, it seems like, starting to get going after all these seasons of setup. And obviously, as we know, Robert Kirkman, famously his first big comic that got adapted into a show, The Walking Dead, famously had a problem of, okay, like, when was this going to end? And that was a problem that went all the way back even to the comics, not even just with the show. And the show also, like Game of Thrones, deviated very, very heavily from the comics. But so I was kind of worried that I'm like, okay, it seems like we're getting to the point now where the main conflict struggle is going to happen. But this is also adapting like a comic series that takes up 3 full-size compendiums. I'm like,
big books.
They're big books too. So I'm like, where exactly is this going to go? And so I did some reading ahead, obviously worried that this was going to have another Walking Dead problem where it's like, okay, after we resolve the main conflict, are we just going to keep going on infinitum? And it'll be interesting to see how they adapt this, because the stuff that happens after the main Viltrumite conflict that presumably is going to happen this season, it is interesting. There's a lot more cool stuff that does happen, but I'm going to be interested to see how they pace it, especially given how this past week was an entirely original story that was not in the comics at all. And so I'm going to be very, very interested to see how if they are able to keep the momentum going with the show, especially since I believe that Kirkman said that he would be willing to go up to 9 seasons if that's what it took in order to adapt it fully. And again, it's an interesting thing of where, like, okay, they have to like make the alliance with the bad guy in order to like sustain the plot and keep it going farther, rather than like just resolving it, because there's a universe where this upcoming Viltrumite war that is going to evolve Mark and presumably Oliver as well, since he's half Viltrumite, could have just been the ending of it, but because it's Robert Kirkman, he kept it going after that. So I'm going to be interested to see if they're able to sustain this really solid momentum that they've been keeping up really since the return of the second season. Because again, we had that extremely, extremely long gap, almost a 3-year long gap between seasons 1 and 2. Season 2 actually ended up being split up into 2 parts that aired across the fall and the spring. They've been keeping it consistent, obviously, and Kirkman said that they're going to keep it consistent in this time slot, the beginning of the year, between about like February and March every year, presumably for the next couple of years until the show wraps up. But like I said, we do still have some interesting storylines that happen post the main Viltrumite conflict. But like I said, it's whether they will be able to maintain the momentum and quality will be interesting, to say the least, because there are a couple things already that have happened within the first couple episodes of this season that have shown that, there are still going to be some storylines that kind of get put on the back burner that will then end up coming back later on.
Yeah, but again, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm not like as soon as it comes out, I need to watch it. But it's like, okay, I'll watch it sometime during the week. So I'm caught up fully on it yet, but there's a lot of TV to watch.
Yeah,
apparently.
there is a lot of TV to watch. So
and it's all coming out at the same time. And we have to watch Lost.
And we have to watch Lost too, as it always is. Like I said, we still have Your Friends and Neighbors coming up next week. We still have The Boys coming up. We still have Euphoria coming up. And we're presumably going to get a release date for House of the Dragon sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we still have a lot of stuff coming out. So let's hop out of the realm of superheroes for a second. Let's hop over to Monarch right now. So Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Season 2. Another Apple TV Plus show that when it started, we were kind of like, oh, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but with the Godzilla movies. Okay. And then Season 1, I think it's safe to say, ended up being a huge surprise. And this is wow, we're able to get they're actually able to give us interesting human conflict conjoined with the great monster action, even though Godzilla himself only appeared in 2 episodes in the first season, the way in which they were able to utilize him, as well as kind of showing the origin of Monarch and actually really getting us invested in a cast of characters that I did not at all think that was going to work. I'm like, you got Kurt Russell, you got the girl from Shogun, Anna Sawai, who I think was Shogun aired right after the first season of Monarch wrap. So it was really funny seeing her give 2 vastly different kinds of performances across those 2 shows. Anders Holm from Workaholics as the younger version of John Goodman's character from the Kong Skull Island movie. Joe Tippett from the Mayor of Easttown show. And along with a couple of new people, a couple of familiar faces that have popped up, in guest star spots. Kiersey Clemens, obviously, who plays Iris West in the Flash movies. You got Dominique Tipper, who's best known for playing Naomi Nagata in The Expanse. Cliff Curtis popped up this season, and so this season premiered. Again, another 3-year gap between shows. It's just that's just it's still gonna happen. Unfortunately, apparently, it was 3 years between both this and For All Mankind and their previous seasons. For All Mankind, I know, was airing around the same time as the first season of Monarch, but I ended up choosing to watch Monarch rather than For All Mankind season 4, especially because at the time that seemed like it was just going to be a setup episode. And so this season picked up immediately right after the events of last season. It showed them freeing Kurt Russell from the Axis Mundi spot. There was some interesting timey-wimey revelations that were shown there as far as how he was able to basically still look like Kurt Russell, even though he was supposed to be closer to the age of 90. And unfortunately, they ended up releasing a whole new Titan that has kind of been the centerpiece of this season. The season started on Skull Island with Kong. It showed Kong trying to stop this new Titan when it was released, that has been revealed to be Titan X, and we've been getting into kind of the origins of this creature and how, Kurt Russell's character in the past portrayed by Wyatt Russell, along with the Bill Randa character and the Mari Yamamoto character, Kiko, who has since been returned now to the present, but has, completely not aged. So I still have to kind of wrap my mind around that. How all that is kind of dovetailing into this new monster threat. And this season has kind of, in a way, it's brought back some of the issues that I have with the movies where the human conflict is starting to become a little tiresome, where all of the characters, now that you have some reunions of characters that haven't seen each other, some of them in decades or so, are bringing back old traumas and conflicts. And they try to do a really weird thing in this past episode that showed that because Kiko was in love with 2 men, that's why her son Hiroshi had 2 families. And I was just enough of this. I don't care.
That was a bit
we don't need this at all.
You'd know something about that. I'm
yeah.
What do you...
I'm what is this? But once again, every time we have a Titan on screen, because Apple spares no expense when it comes to that, it is phenomenal. Unlike last week, we had the Scarabs killing those 2 surfers and Titan X, wiping out that 1 Monarch ship. And then this week we have, they're back in San Soledad, which is the spot where they first discovered the origin of the creature. And you have Apex trying to take control of it. And of course, it fails miserably, like we knew it was going to. And then we have the tragic death of the Hiroshi character as well. But so what are your thoughts on this season of Monarch so far? And especially now that we're halfway through, we're 5 episodes in.
Yeah, the first season feels like so long ago, but it was also so sort of fresh in comparison to the MonsterVerse movies. You had this dual timeline thing, which, by the way, I'm really starting to notice how many TV shows do.
It's a lot.
I watched a bit of Paradise because
that also does it.
Yeah, that also, but that does 10 times more confusing than anything Lost does. And okay, this isn't that interesting anyway. I'm not gonna watch it. And James Marsden isn't even alive past the first episode. So what's the point? So many shows do it. Damn you, Lost. And then Project Hail Mary does it.
Project Hail Mary did it too. I'm it's everywhere. It is everywhere. The island is everywhere.
But this season, it's kind of okay, there's a big Titan. we're gonna follow it. We're gonna see
Yeah.
where it goes. Oh, it's going over here. Oh, it's gonna go over here next. We're gonna go over there. And the past plot. Well, there was like not even like any of the past plot line in this last episode.
Correct.
I feel
Correct.
like so you're not even utilizing that to your full potential. Kong hasn't really been in the show
Yeah.
as much as I'd hoped. Like you got one Titan and it's not going. I do like the Apex edition is like another Monarch.
Every time they're on Apex, I'm like, more of them.
I wish they were like just hyper competent, like compared to Monarch. That would have been like a maybe a cooler contrast. But you know, maybe there's something in the second half. Maybe Kong or Godzilla gets involved and
but we know that both Kong and Godzilla are going to be involved, considering that, you know, you had Kurt Russell saying that line in the trailer. But the other issue I feel like that's happening with this season specifically is that whereas in the first season it was really cool seeing all these hints and add-ups and references to these characters and events that we knew from the movies, now that we're like kind of getting further and further on, it's getting into that situation where the thing that we hated about a lot of other shows is now starting to happen to Monarch, where it's kind of pulling a little bit of a Star Wars, where because it is like handicapped by events that have already happened in the movies, like we know that Apex proves to ultimately be the most incompetent, given, you know, the fact that they create Mecha-God. We know that in a few years from now, they're going to create Mecha-Godzilla, and we all know what happens.
I forget.
There. That's
all these vaguely ass-named things like Apex, Titan X, like you guys got to give it a little bit more.
Yeah, and
get the marketing team
in this past episode, we see that the you know, the Naomi Nagata, the Dominique Tipper character. I don't even know what her character's name is in this. I just call her Naomi because that's just who I know her as from The Expanse. So, you know, have on the phone with Walter, the CEO, who is the Demian Bashir character from Godzilla versus Kong. You know, and so you have all of these different things, and so it's starting to get to the point where I'm like, how much more can this show actually do outside of the movies? Because the other problem, too, is the movies are still continuing forward, right? And are taking place in real time.
Yeah.
But
and they don't really acknowledge each other.
Right, but the show is still a period piece because this season, right, you had the time jump, obviously, between when the characters went into Access Money at the end of last season and then came out on Skull Island. And there was a 3-year jump from like 2-year jump from like 2015 to 2017. So this season, the main event timeline take place in 2017. Meanwhile, we're in 2026. That's 9 years ago. And according to real time.
And next year, they're going to fight someone from space, presumably.
Presumably, exactly. Like... When the new movie comes out with a much better cast. And so I'm just like, okay, how is Monarch going to have to like finagle itself? It's funny how I made the joke that this was the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. of the Godzilla movies. And now it has literally become that, where it is fucking forced to sequester to the movies ultimately, and cannot kind of take itself in its own direction. It is always going to act as supplemental material to the movies. And now that the human characters and conflicts aren't interesting enough to keep it going, and they're kind of falling back on same old kind of soap opera-ish tactics, it's like, I'm kind of wondering what else really the show has going for it.
You know what this is good for? There's a creature in The Way of Kings in the early book that's like kind of similar in shape to Titan X. So if they can get the people who do the animation on Titan X on the what is it called, Chasm Fiend, I think it's called, there's a big fight, then okay, this is good practice for that later down the.
So what you're saying is I need to read The Way of Kings, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm like a quarter of way through it, and it's like it's gonna be a big show.
Yeah,
I haven't even gotten to any of the good stuff. So.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that is those are some very, very dense books. I saw. I think like Wind and Truth, the final book, was like bigger than A Dance of Dragons, which is like up like one of the biggest fantasy novels I've ever had.
I think they're all A Dance of Dragons sized.
That's
pretty
crazy.
Much.
That's absolutely gnarly. Yeah, there's a reason why I've been holding off on reading those, and especially since I haven't even finished the Mistborn trilogy. I still have to read Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages before I get to that. And then, of course, you know, they have the whole Cosmere verse, but I don't know if I'm gonna get to the rest of the Cosmere ultimately, especially since it feels like, for the most part, outside of Mistborn and Stormlight Archives, the rest of Cosmere is kind of is kind of supplemental material. So I feel like that's really all I have to say about Monarch. Moving on, we had the premiere of Daredevil Born Again season 2, or as I like to say, Daredevil season 5. So once again, another one that's picking up right after the events of the last season, with Daredevil continuing to wage his war against Wilson Fisk, who has basically become the king of New York, essentially. We're going to get a couple of old characters back. We're getting Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones back this season. Bullseye is still doing whatever the hell he wants off on the side. We got Matthew Lillard, Mr. Charles. Matthew Lillard been on a run recently between this and Five Nights at Freddy's. So, we only had one episode, but it was an awesome jam-packed, action-packed episode. Thankfully, it seems like the Frankenstein days of the last season are behind us. So what did you think of the premiere of Daredevil Born Again this season, the Northern Star?
Yeah, it's a good start to Marvel's TV campaign for the year. With Wonder Man was just delightful in every way, and they're getting a season 2 now, so that's going to be presumably involved.
You've seen all the memes where it's like Loki and Daredevil like congratulating Wonder Man, be like, "Welcome to the season 2 club," and then you have all the other like characters from the other TV shows just off on the side, be like, "Yay, congratulations!"
But yeah, Daredevil is again, it's just good Marvel TV, because we've been through the trenches with all the 6-episode events, as they called them, and now they're actually trying to do a TV show. They got the right people on board, and it's not going to be like 5 episodes of no Daredevil, just Lawyer Man, and it's clear this is going to tie into, at least in some vague way, into Spider-Man, because he's getting the key to the city in that movie, and then I don't think Wilson Fisk would give him the key to the city.
Definitely not.
If he was mayor. So we'll see how that develops. So again, just another thing to tune into every week.
It's been a minute since we've done a little bit of Marvel housekeeping, considering like kind of how much the MCU was pulled back, obviously, given the events of what happened with everything that went on immediately after COVID. We don't need to go into detail on that because everybody and their mother knows about it, but just so that we know where this takes place within the chronology. So you have this season, and then you have the Punisher one shot that's going to conclude this season, the 1 hour long Punisher special that's going to air after this season wraps in May. And then both of those are going to build into Spider-Man Brand New Day, which apparently all of these either take place like right after the events of Thunderbolts, or like right during or before the events of Thunderbolts, something like that. So like we're getting closer to the events as far as when Doomsday is approaching. Obviously, we're getting that at the end of last year. Again, Marvel has drastically pulled back its output. It's only really focusing on movies that they know are going to work. Like I said, we've only got Spider-Man and Doomsday coming out this year. Next year, the only movie that's on the docket is Secret Wars, that'll be the big reset. And then we have Black Panther 3 and X-Men confirmed for 2028. And then as far as the TV shows go, you're right. They really have pulled back. They're not doing all of these, 6-episode events that are basically supposed to be like movies in TV show form. They've really pulled back on that. They're really focusing on like, okay, Marvel TV is going to be TV going forward. And for the most part, it's been working, I would say. All their animated stuff, for the most part, X-Men 97, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man have all been working out. The Marvel
Zombies. Do we have a date for X-Men?
We do not.
Still
not
this
yet.
year, right?
We just know that that's going to be a summer release.
Okay.
What's it called? Wonder Man. They drastically reshaped that. Andrew Guest, the showrunner, also a Community writer, even said that there was a point where he wasn't even sure if that show was going to get released, and I'm very, very happy they did. Like I said, that was, even though that was released under the Marvel spotlight, dumped all in one weekend, it did very, very well for them. What's it called? We also have Vision Quest coming out later this year, which is going to kind of wrap up any of the loose overhanging storylines that have been overhanging since WandaVision, it'll have been 5 years. It's been 5 years since WandaVision aired, which is absolutely insane to me that it's been that long. And how it feels like within literally half the time that we got the original Marvel Cinematic Universe, it feels like we've gotten more of that, and it's been even more confusing given all the behind-the-scenes problems that have happened. They're still trying to make a Blade movie, even though Mahershala Ali is definitely not involved anymore. The fact that we got Blade in an animated Marvel one-off show with the Marvel Zombies thing, and then Daredevil comes back, and Daredevil's been a massive success. And thankfully, I think they've learned all the right lessons in the sense of where we loved kind of this segment of Marvel, if we're talking about like the specific Netflix era, the Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. We love that because it was separate enough from the movies and knowing that it existed within the rest of the MCU and could reference it, but for the most part could maintain its anonymity and as a result be able to maintain its drastically different tone from the MCU. This is kind of what made us fall in love with the whole cinematic project in general, and why it's what made those Disney Plus shows kind of not only feel like homework, but really distressing, because that's not what we love the TV shows for. But Now TV, they have thankfully like remained like TV is going to be TV. Daredevil is kind of very much so back to kind of its roots as far as what made us fall in love with the show in the first place. And yeah, like you were saying, it's really just a fun thing to watch, each week. It's whether it's going to be important as far as building into the events of what will happen in the movies, we don't know. But at this point, I don't even really care, honestly, because I'm really, it's just all eyes are just on Spider-Man and Doomsday ultimately, and as far as what's going to entail
and
that.
Spider-Man looks very much awesome.
Yes,
and
we're getting Destin Daniel Cretton again after I would say a lackluster beginning entry into the MCU with Shang-Chi, again knowing that he co-show ran Wonder Man and seeing how that turned out, and now given that Spider-Man looks probably, first of all, just like the most visually interesting, I think that any of more so than any of the previous 3 movies, and the fact that this one, again, it's going to be a lot darker, it's going to be a lot more mature. He's living on his own now after having suffered the canon event tragedy that every Spider-Man is supposed to suffer. You got Punisher, you got Bruce Banner, the Hulk, and it's presumably Savage Hulk. We still don't know who Sadie Sink is playing. You've got what's it called? You've got all these different villains that he's facing. Tombstone, Scorpion, Michael Mando actually in the Scorpion outfit. He's going to be fighting a bunch of other villains: Tarantula, Boomerang, the Hand. You've also presumably got hints to the human spider arc from the 90s Spider-Man show, especially given that the Punisher is in this movie. That makes the most sense that they're doing this. Overall, yeah, I'm very, very excited.
They got Keith David in there, apparently.
But I don't know who he's going to be playing, so I don't really know like what that's going to be all about.
You can't mistake that voice for anyone else.
Yeah, that's true. But so like I said, it's kind of funny how we were supposed to talk about Daredevil, then we ended up talking about Spider-Man. But Daredevil, it's awesome. It's great, and I'm really, really happy that we got it back. That one little hint, that one little cameo in No Way Home all those years ago ended up, reviving, I would say, the best thing that Netflix ever gave us. So let's wrap up this show. Let's get into the show that we've all really been looking forward to. So For All Mankind, after a 3-year wait since the last season, we're finally back. It took them a while, but we are back. I just wrapped season 4 last night, leading into the first episode of this new season. And man, let me tell you something. Going into season 4, after the way that season 3 ended, God, it's so long ago because season 3 was all the way back in summer of 2022. I didn't really know what to expect going into season 4, considering that, For All Mankind does the whole thing of where every season jumps ahead a decade. And so it feels like there's a whole bunch of like new technological kind of advances that they have to do. Season 3 obviously ended with them having settled Mars. Going into season 4, we're in the 2000s now. And now we're getting to the point where, is Mars worth continuing to invest in? It ends with, Dev Aisa, the Edie Gathika character, basically coming to Mars and basically being like, yeah, let's say fuck Earth. Let's basically, it ends with them like hijacking an asteroid, out from under NASA and Roscosmos' noses. They succeed. And now that leads into the events of this season. Now we're in 2012. Which is, it is insane to me how we've covered this much time within only a short amount of years. I still remember when this season started, and it being the alternate Apollo 11 event where the U.S. is watching Russia beat us to the moon, and now it's led us to here. And kind of, it's insane to me how, again, the showrunner of this show, Ronald D. Moore, obviously we know it was also the showrunner of the Battlestar Galactica reboot from the early 2000s, and now I'm even more convinced that this is going to be a prequel to that show, given how far we've come, and given like kind of the opening sequence of this episode shows that like they have like basically fully settled on Mars. There's multiple greenhouses, like there's like little shops that are like resembling the Expanse. Like it really has become like Mars has become like its own its own autonomous thing that really, for the most part, has become separate from Earth. What's it called? Joel Kinnaman still around, even though the character of Ed Baldwin
somehow
is like in his
and
80s.
He's so good at playing 80s.
It's impressive. Like, and I even saw a thing of where it's like, wow, that old age makeup. Like Joel Kinnaman is like even better at playing Ed in his 80s than he was in his 70s last season. So I'm just like, yeah, like it truly boggles my mind how the show continues to push the boundaries as far as its storytelling and what it's capable of.
Yeah, I got to this late. I think, when did I start? I think I started like right when season 4 was rolling around. So then I binged season 1 to 3. I'm like, what the hell was I doing? This is like tailor made for me.
Yeah.
Why haven't I been watching? This is like space and alternative history. It's so perfect. I guess it's like it's one of the better shows that not that many people are watching.
Right.
Like
Clearly people are
globally.
watching it, considering that this is its 5th season.
Yeah.
This is Apple's longest running show up until this point.
But I guess it doesn't get talked about as much in your online circles. But I guess maybe since it's been such a long gap, everyone's finally coming out of their caves to talk about this show. So yeah, I guess season 4 up to season 3, I thought the trajectory was better. Each season. Season 4 was a bit of a dip, but I was like, okay, you're 4 seasons in, you're allowed a dip by this point. So, and then they introduced the whole Iridium asteroid thing. I was like, okay, that's a big juicer to the overall storyline. And then the way that season ended, Mars said, okay, we're just going to keep the asteroid for ourselves. Thank you very much. And then now this sets up essentially like an Earth-Mars war for this season. So we're only 1 episode in, but we're starting to lay the seeds. We're catching up on, because I can't remember where everyone is at this point.
Well, so I guess my whole thing is, again, given that my mindset, I guess, is still kind of in the first era, the first 3 seasons of the show, considering that that's kind of where I was like the most involved, during the height of COVID. Season 1 drops as part of Apple's initial batch of shows that it all drops just on its service.
It was like
all 10 episodes.
One of the first few shows.
Right. It was like that, the morning show, and C were like its first couple seasons. Then Ted Lasso starts, the week-to-week approach, I believe, the following year. And then so season 2 is like a COVID watch, right, since that's in 2021, and then season 3 is summer of 2022. So we're still kind of in COVID, but we're in that weird period where we're starting to come out of it. But considering how not only does the show jump ahead a decade each season, but the show and how flippant it is to not be afraid to kill off characters, it's almost all the characters that we came and got to know throughout the course of the first couple of seasons are either dead, their characters were killed off, or have left the show. So I think the only characters left that have been there since the first season are the Ed, Baldwin, and Margot Madison characters, who are like in their 80s and like decrepit geriatric.
I think Aleda was also in season 1.
Well, Aleda was in season 1, but she was a little kid in that season, So now you have Aleda, so you have the Aleda Rosales character, and then Ed's adopted daughter, Kelly Baldwin, who, those characters have been mainstays now since season 2. But now, again, those characters have been around so long and they've jumped ahead so often that now you have a whole new cast of characters that have come in to replace them. The Dev Aisa character, the Edie Gatheke character who's introduced in season 3, the Miles Dale character, of much needed rejuvenation for Toby Kebbell, who was stuck in like blockbuster hell for so long after he gave an unbelievable mocap performance as Koba in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then was just stuck in shitbox after shitbox after shitbox for so long. And he's finally got his just desserts in last season. But like I said, now that we've jumped ahead a decade, now we're getting introduced to a whole new batch of characters, because now you have Ed's grandson and Miles' daughter, who are portrayed respectively by Sean Kaufman and Ruby Cruz, who are now like gonna shepherd like the new generation of characters that's gonna be that are presumably gonna be on the forefront of this Mars versus Earth conflict. Not to mention that we have a couple of new castings as well from TV's past. You have Costa Ronan, famously portrayed the character of Oleg Burov on the latter 5 seasons of The Americans, which is a show that I highly, highly recommend for both you and anybody else who has not watched. And Muriel Enos, who was made famous for that early AMC effort that like kind of flew under the radar during the height of Breaking Bad and Mad Men, called The Killing, which also starred Joel Kinnaman. So you've got a little bit of a reunion on that front. So again, this show's kind of momentum is always forward. It just never, ever stops. And if they keep up this momentum, by the time that the show wraps with its upcoming 6th season, which they have announced will be the last season of the show, will have been caught up in real time, will be in the 2020s. And given how fast that the show moves, who knows what they'll have advanced, because the conflict that's introduced in the beginning of this episode is Dev is focused on making Mars a self-sustaining colony that is independent and no longer dependent on Earth, while Aleda and Kelly are still focused on trying to discover life on alternate planets. They're out to the point now where they're starting to explore the moons of Saturn and trying to discover and see if there's life there. So you're already getting set up for like, wow, we are in the future. And not only, even though the show is technically still a period piece, because the events that are happening have occurred a decade before the events of the real world, they're like, yeah, this truly is like the bright future that we should be living in, and then the real world is the darkest timeline where just everything went wrong ultimately. So again, it never ceases to amaze me what this show has pulled off and what it has accomplished, and I'm very, very excited to see what this season brings.
Yeah, well, a show with this many characters, you can just always like come up with a few storylines to go around the main one, and they all just feed into each other, and then eventually they feed back into each other in the finale. It's like this is how TV is supposed to be done. It just happens to be in space with different planets.
Exactly.
It's still ultimately still very grounded in its conflict, even with all the space stuff. And then with Project Hail Mary at the same time.
Exactly. Yep. And especially too how it just as far as the story of what happens in this first episode, First Light, how it's basically it's a murder mystery that is probably going to spiral out into like this massive conspiracy where again it's the Alex character.
Isn't the Expanse season 1 also like a murder mystery?
Yes, very much so. That again, it's Game of Thrones. It's a small little murder mystery that spirals out and ends up involving everybody. And next thing you know, you got a full-on civil war that's happening as a result of it. Again,
so if you want to start a big show, start with a murder mystery.
Start with a murder mystery. It's a great way to sucker us in. That's exactly it. Yeah, I'm going to be really, really excited. Like when you watch The Expanse and you binge that show in like a month, like I know you're going to once you start it, you definitely got to let me know because we are going to cover that show in depth ultimately when we get to that. So yeah, it's again great stuff. TV is officially back. We are officially into the TV watching time period again. We've still only scratched the surface. Like I said, The Pit is wrapping up in the next couple of weeks, but we have we have Your Friends and Neighbors coming this week, this Friday. We have The Boys, the premiere of the final season of The Boys coming the following Wednesday. Euphoria this month. March may be over, but we still have a lot of stuff to get into going forward. And obviously, again, we have all the movies that we're going to be covering throughout April and then getting into May. The long-awaited sequel of one of your favorite movies of all time, The Devil Wears Prada. We're going to be covering that.
I'm really don't have high hopes.
Yep. Oh,
like,
man.
I don't. Like, the conflict's gone. They resolved their tensions. Like, what the hell do they... I don't know. This seemed like they did. So, I'm hoping to be proven wrong desperately.
Yes, indeed. But like I said, just to give you guys a little bit of housekeeping as far as what you guys can expect from us coming out over the next couple of months. So next weekend, Luke and I will be doing Cabin Fever, and then we'll also be reviewing the dual release of the Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie and the drama. Then the week after that, I am taking off since I will be out of town. We may or may not hit the Euphoria premiere. If we do, it'll be that Monday. If we don't, honestly, we probably won't be missing much. Then we will be wrapping up Lost Season 4 that third weekend of April with There's No Place Like Home. And then we'll be wrapping up the month of April with the review of Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic. That's going to be an interesting episode to see where that goes. Also, Luke of the Franchise Addicts and myself will be wrapping up our Paul Thomas Anderson rewatch with There Will Be Blood. That will be up later this week. And then as far as what's coming out over the next couple of weeks, like I said, so myself and Eli will be starting our recap of The Boys, the final season, similar to what we did 2 years ago. That will be starting not this coming week, but the following week, April 8th, when the final season drops, only dropping its first 2 episodes as opposed to 3, so that they can drag out, when the rest of those episodes happen. Then we'll also be starting a recap of House of the Dragon when that premieres in June. And we also have a little reveal as far as what our next rewatch series will be after we conclude Paul Thomas Anderson, but stay tuned for that. I will be dropping a little hint on my Instagram this week as far as what that will be. So in the meantime, stay tuned for all of that and more coming out for the rest of the year. Luke, thank you once again for joining me. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. Haven't been in the creating mood, but there's big movies in the summer that are worth making stuff for.
Indeed.
2 very close to each other.
Yes, indeed. So. Yes, indeed. Only 2 weeks apart, those two. And you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to give this video a like and a subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and be sure to follow us if you're listening to us on Spotify. We will be back next week for the presumably what will be the first the second mega hit of the year, possibly the first movie to hit $1 billion of the year, the Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie. Will it be better than the first one? Stay tuned to find out. But in the meantime, people, 12 seasons on a short film, and get lost. We'll see you guys next week.